Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag and talking through some of the reading that I've done in the first half of the year, some plans for the second half, and just reflecting and making plans. So there we go. Let's just dive right in and get straight into the questions. So the first question is best book that you've read so far in 2022. That's a really challenging question. It's a very big, important question, and I think I might do like a best books of the first 6 months of 2022, like top 5 that I've read as a separate video. For now, I will just name one, and I will try and get all my other like favourite books into different questions and different prompts. But one of my favourite books that I've read so far this year is Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. This is the first book in the Seven Waters series by her, and I loved this. I really, really loved this. This was like such an amazing read. It was such an amazing read. So this, you are following a main character, Saoirse, and it is a retelling of The Six Swans, and you follow her growing up in rural Ireland in the medieval times when Ireland and England were at war. And then there is these sort of magical fairy tale, folktale like elements woven in. And I'd say that this one, especially in the beginning, is very exposition heavy as you grow to like learn more about the world, learn about the characters, learn about her relationships with her family. And that all really paid off in the second half of the book when I was so attached to Saoirse, so attached to her relationship, so attached to her as a character and the people that she was meeting, and it's so beautifully written. I was so like swept up into this world and experiencing Saoirse's emotions and what she was going through and where this was going. I will say trigger warnings in here for assault, and it is on page and it is quite a brutal scene, so if that is traumatic or triggering for you, then please be aware of that going in. So it definitely is adult, but overall I just thoroughly enjoy this and would definitely recommend it. And also, if you haven't read any Juliette Marillier, I would definitely recommend starting here. I felt like it was a really great entry point into her works. Okay, and then question number 2 is best sequel that you've read in 2022. So there's a couple, but I'm going to mention one, and that is The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. I mean, who's surprised? I'm not at all surprised because I pretty much love everything that John Gwynne has ever written. I've read everything that he has published to date, as far as I'm aware. That I've read all of The Faithful and the Fallen, all of Blood and Bone, and the 2 published works in the Bloodsworn series. So this is the second one in that series, the first one being The Shadow of the Gods. The Shadow of the Gods, you're following 3 main characters. Elva, who is part of a warband, who comes from quite a wealthy family and she's trying to make a name for herself. Varg, who is a former slave and he falls into another warband, a different one. And Orca, who is a mother, and at the beginning of the book there is a catalyst which propels her onto a journey. And you're set in a Norse-inspired world where there are these dead gods, and it's sort of the rise of these dead gods, and it's a very dark and very brutal world, and I absolutely loved this second book in the series. For me, this was better than the first book. It was just, I couldn't put the book down. I just couldn't put the book down. I was like, what's going to happen next? There is a lot of travelling in this, like a lot of the characters are moving from one place to another to try and fulfil their, not quest, but like fulfill their objectives. There is a lot of traveling and a lot of moving pieces, but I loved it. I loved seeing how these characters grow. I love that there is more of an exploration on these gods and what these gods mean and their impact upon the world and that whole lore and history. And then I really liked the introduction of the 2 new POVs, which are more of the villainous kind of points of view, and I just really enjoyed seeing their perspective and seeing their motivation and why they were acting the way that they were. So overall, this was a really solid conclusion for me, and I can't wait for the 3rd and final book to come out in this series because I need it, and I need it right now. Question number 3 is new release you haven't read yet and want to. I feel like I've been doing okay with my new releases, but I haven't been like doing amazingly well. Because I have been really trying to work on series, so some of the new releases that I have been reading have been sequels. So I've been doing quite well, I think, with reading my sequels. I haven't really been reading any like starts of series for new releases because I'm trying. The thing is with new releases, as I see all the hype for them, I'm like, yes, I want to read that. And then I'm like, but if I read that, I then have to wait a year for the next one. And then depending on how much I like that book, my interest could wane. That if I just read the books back to back, then I could be enjoying the whole trilogy or whatever. But if I have to wait a year between each instalment of maybe even a 4-star book, then I might end up losing interest by the time the next one comes out. So I've been maybe buying a few new releases, but I haven't been reading them all. I have 2 examples of this. And they're both very pretty, so they could probably fit into another question as well. I have Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan, which is a retelling of the Chinese moon goddess Chang'e. You're following the daughter of the moon goddess, and she's being hidden from this celestial empire, and then I guess in the course of the book she is discovered, and she makes her way to the celestial kingdom, a land of wonders and secrets. In disguise, she trains along the emperor's son, mastering archery and magic despite the passions which flame between them, and she is trying to rescue her mother. And I'm really excited to read this, and I know that the sequel is coming out later on this year, so I do think I am going to read this year, because I'm definitely interested in this, and it's so pretty as well. I think it's going to be for me, and then it's just a duology, so I can finish it this year. One that I am very much interested in, but it is the start of a trilogy, is The City of Dusk by Tara Sim. This is like a multiple perspective story with 4 realms, life, death, light and darkness, all converge on the City of Dusk, ruled by the 4 noble houses of Nexus. Dark magic, vengeful gods and rebellious chosen ones. It sounds perfect for me. It sounds like it's got everything I'm going to want in a book. Really, really does. So I really hope that I like this when I get to it, but so far it's a new release I haven't got to. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. So I feel as though I've had lots of sequels like coming out in this first half that I've been trying to like work towards, and there are a couple more sequels that are going to be coming out in June, but if you're thinking about the second half of the year, those don't really apply, such as Speaking Bones by Ken Liu and Lachlan's by Robert Jackson Bennett. Like, I'm really excited for them, but I guess you could still technically count those as first half of the year. So if I'm thinking second half of the year, then Babel by R.F. Kuang I'm really excited about, and I've seen very positive reviews for that so far, so I'm really excited for that, and that it's a standalone. I loved The Poppy War. I wasn't a massive fan of The Burning God, but knowing that this is a standalone gives me some hope. But I'm also really nervous because I know that it is set in Oxford and London, and I am from Oxford originally, or just outside of it, and I live in London, so I feel if there's any inconsistencies in terms of the location, I'm going to spot it. Like, it's going to be really obvious to me as someone that is brought up, born and raised in Oxford, living in London. Like, it's just, I don't know, I feel I would just see it. I would just see it. So I really hope that there aren't any of those issues. For someone that's not from either of those places, I think she has lived in Oxford. I'm really hoping that I'm going to like it, and I'm not going to see any inconsistencies in terms of the location or the way that people talk, or the way that anything Oxfordian is described. Like anything I would see, most probably. So I am excited but very nervous for Babel. Biggest disappointment, I'm sad about it, and I don't necessarily think it's the worst. It's not the worst book in the world, but I am disappointed in Gallant by V. Schwab, because I have loved so many V. Schwab's other books. Like, I loved The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I loved that book, and I still do. I still love Addie LaRue, but I really like that. I really like the Darker Shades of Magic series. Like, I love those books, but I didn't love this because I found that it lacked in substance and was just, it fell flat. It didn't have any structure, not structure, but like, it lacked substance. It lacked, it was just very bland. Someone mentioned this in one of my comments. It's as though she was trying for like Coraline, Neil Gaiman, and then it fell flat. It didn't quite live up to Coraline, which I have read and really enjoyed. So I feel like it's a subpar version of Coraline. Very, very pretty book. Very, very pretty, but I wanted a lot more from it than what I got, and I just wanted a lot more depth to it. Maybe if it was darker, just more. I wanted more. It was as though she was really going for the atmosphere but failed in the plot, or just failed to give it any real atmosphere. I don't know, it was missing. But I mean, I don't think it was bad. I think it was it was well written. It was well written, and it was like compelling to read. Like, I read it relatively quickly. I don't necessarily see it as a bad book. There's nothing like objectively bad in here. It was just a bit flavourless. Biggest surprise. So this could also fall into like best book, best sequel, best everything, but it is also the biggest surprise, and that is The Wall of Storms, which I read this month in June, so I haven't talked about it yet. I adored this. I loved this. This is like one of the best. This is one of the best books. It's like one of the best books. So this is the sequel to The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu, and I say that this is a surprise. Although I love The Paper Menagerie, which I read at the beginning of the year, I was a bit lukewarm on The Grace of Kings. Like, I thought it was good, but it was like a 3.5 star. It was a good book. It was really, really good, but let the helicopter go past and then I can continue gushing. I didn't really know how I was going to feel about this because it was a sequel to a 3.5 star book. This was an easy 5-star book. This like knocked it out the park. This took Grace of Kings and it went up, like not just one level, it went up multiple levels, and I loved this. I loved this. I buddy read this with Patrick and we both had a really good time with this. This was an 850 page book, which felt like a 500 page book. And now here comes the ice cream van. Helicopter ice cream van. Everyone wants to interrupt me talking and gushing about the Wall of Storms. Okay, I've just gone and bought loads of ice creams at the supermarket. Like, you go do your thing elsewhere. Okay, so The Grace of Kings is a Asian-inspired fantasy, very historical story set in the Kingdom of Dara. Following the death of the Emperor, there is a lot of political ramifications of this, and you have warring factions that are trying to take control of the empire and seek control of the populace, and you are following multiple characters as they try to gain control. And then this book is following mostly the children of some of those characters and the situation following that. I found that Grace of Kings read very, very historical and very much like a prologue to this in a way, that it really set up the history of the world, whereas this, it really felt like I was getting to know these characters. Like, that's what I was missing in that book, that I was never connected to the characters. I was so connected to these characters. They were just so real, so dynamic, just everything that I wanted. I will say, like, the first half is very, very like politics heavy, like political ramifications, lots of like maneuvering, manipulating people, lots of different pieces. And then the second half, there is like a change in tone, change in pace, as things become a lot more, there is a lot more like tension and a lot more like drama. But I think it was so well written. I was, from like a couple of chapters in, I was already so connected to the characters. Like, I got so connected to these characters, so connected. So it was such a surprise, and if you can't tell, I loved it because I've just gushed about it and was annoyed by the interruptions of the helicopter and the ice cream van. I would recommend this. I'd highly recommend this. Which leads nicely into the next question or prompt, which is new favourite author. And if you didn't guess by my gushing of The Wall of Storms, that would be Ken Liu. So I've read 3 books of his currently this year, and I'm definitely excited to keep going and keep working through the Dandelion Dynasty and read the second half of it. I'm very excited to read The Veiled Throne and Speaking Bones. But I have absolutely, aside from not loving all of The Grace of Kings, I have really loved and gave 5 stars to both The Wall of Storms and The Paper Menagerie, which is his short story collection. And I would say that he's definitely become a new favourite author. I think the way that he writes is really engaging, really emotive, and he seems like a really clever person. Like, I feel I'd be a little bit intimidated talking to him because his books seem really, really clever, but they're still very digestible. I just feel like the way he interweaves like different ideas into his books, like ideas to do with technology, to do with history, to do with language. I just really enjoy reading about that and seeing the way that he interweaves these into a fantasy or sci-fi collection of stories here. So I would definitely recommend Ken Liu if you haven't read any of his books, and he has definitely been like a standout new favourite author for me. The next 2 questions. So question 8 is your newest fictional crush, and question 9 is your newest favourite character. So what I thought I would do, because I don't really have a fictional crush, is do newest favourite character male and newest favourite character female, and do it like that instead, so we can avoid this whole crush situation. My male new favourite character, I think, is Caden from the Shadow of What Was Lost and the Lycanius trilogy. So Caden gets introduced maybe midway through, a third of the way through this book, and then he's present through quite a lot of the series. And I feel like I can't speak too much about him because a lot of who he is spoilery. But I will say I just really liked his arc. The growth of this character and his overall journey through the 3 books, I think he was a really interesting character to follow and see how he is from book 1 to how he is in book 3, and to see his history and his actions and to try and understand where he's coming from, his motivations. I think he was a very, very interesting character to follow. And then in terms of female characters, one of my favourites is Saoirse from Daughter of the Forest. I loved her. She needs to be protected at all costs. Like, the way I connected to Saoirse and the way that I was just so enraptured in her story just made her my favourite character. Like, she's definitely a favourite character. She has so much strength. Yeah, so she is a healer. She just has so much agency. She's got so much like determination and motivation. Like, she knows what she's trying to do with this task that she's been set, and she is just working towards it. I love seeing her relationships with other characters and how much like drive she has and how much good she has in her. Like, she is so good. She's so like good. You're so rooting for her in this. At least I was really rooting for her, and I was scared for her, and I was like, I don't want anything to happen to her, because we're reading from her perspective, and I was like so just attached to her and her life and what was happening to her. A book that has made me cry, and I don't feel like I've done that much crying this year in terms of books that I've been reading. Maybe I've just been not avoiding, but like maybe I just haven't really been picking up loads of those really hard-hitting books. Like, I haven't really been crying. But I would say that The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu, there are definitely some short stories in here that can definitely get the tear ducts working. You don't quite realise it when you go in, but there's some very hard-hitting stories in here that really can, I was about to say play with your emotions, but that makes it sound like he's being very manipulative. But they can just really hit you, like especially the titular one, The Paper Menagerie, that really hits you. And just some of the way that he explores history and the twists in that can really hit you. Like, this as a collection is very hard hitting. So I would say that this is probably the closest, like, this one. But yeah, I haven't really been crying all too much lately in terms of my books. A book that made me happy, so my reread of Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood, made me really happy. I reread this and I love this book. I love it, and so it just made me really happy to be rereading it, to be back with these characters, to be back in this world, just listening to this audiobook. Like, I had a lot of fun with it. I found it such a fun time rereading this and re-experiencing some of my favourite scenes from this. Like, some of the scenes I remembered, some I forgot a little bit, and just the ending of this, like the whole climax of it, I had so much fun with this reread, and so it made me happy. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that this is the happiest of books, but in terms of the enjoyment that I got out of it and the way that I felt whilst reading this, I would definitely say that this book made me happy as a whole. I wouldn't quite say the same for the second book, but this book made me very, very happy. Most beautiful book that you have bought this year. So I subscribe to the Fairy Loot adult box, and I think they've put out some very, very pretty books this year. So I do think that The City of Dusk is very pretty, especially the this alone is really, really pretty. I do think that the Waterstones edition of Gallant is very, very pretty, with these red sprayed edges, with this, just everything about this I think is really, really pretty. So there's definitely been some pretty books that have been added to my collection. The Daughter of the Moon Goddess, I think, again is very, very pretty with these edges. Like, lots of, and the pink here. Like, I do think that there are some very, very pretty books that have been put out this past year. So there's a selection of some of the pretty books that I've picked up. What book do you need to read by the end of the year? I need to read it, Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. It's been a while now since I've read Words of Radiance, because I read it last October, November. So it's definitely time that I pick up this third book. It is just daunting because it is so big. Like, I feel as though it's going to take me like 2 weeks of a month to read. Realistically, like, it's going to take me 2 weeks. So I feel as though I have to like have the amount of time to dedicate to read this book. It's really heavy as well. So it's just this one. I do need to read it because I definitely want to like get up to date with my Sanderson, at least with the Cosmere. Like, I want to read this. I want to read Mistborn Era 2. I do want to read Rhythm of War as well, like that. I am currently rereading Warbreaker, so I am getting up to date a little bit more. But yes, this definitely is one of those books that I want to read before the end of the year. I mean, I won't hope to read it way before the end of the year. I hope to read it before the end of the summer. And I hope to maybe start it this month, but maybe July, maybe it will be this month's time, this book's time. What is a favourite video from the first 6 months of this year? So one of my favourite videos was my March TBR Star Hop. So I found that video so fun to both film and edit. I mean, it wasn't so fun like doing all of the reading for that month. I mean, it was fun because I read quite a few good books that month, but it was such a fun video to film. I was like laughing, crying, and then editing it I was laughing, crying, and it seemed to have like a good reaction as well. Like other people watching it seemed to find it quite hilarious. So I would say TBR Star Hop, because I did have a lot of fun filming and editing that, and I feel as though Stephanie probably had fun as well watching me suffer. And then the final question is favourite community member. I don't really like this question at all because I don't really want to pick favourites, but I thought I would just change it up a bit and do this as like tag 3 people that I would like to see do this tag. Here are 3 people that I would like to see their answers to these questions. So firstly, I'd love to see the brothers Gwyn and see what their favourite books and their comments on these questions. Read by Kyle, because he reads so many books, so I would like to see him try and pick some answers for these because he reads so many. And Library of a Viking as well, I would like to tag you. So there are some favourite community members as well, but like I found it, I couldn't pick. So there's just 3 people that I would like to tag, or 3 channels that I'm tagging. If any of you want to do this, then you can consider yourselves tagged as well. I do feel like this is traditionally not one of those tags where you necessarily have to tag people, as people just do it at the middle point of the year. So there we go. There are some of my answers to the mid-year book freak out tag. I don't really feel like I'm freaking out, but there we go. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!